Good afternoon, everyone. I see folks are still joining us and coming on in. I love the questions. I'm already thinking in the mindset of, oh, AI, and then, oh, but what if we do it without technology? But nature is so important. And of course, we often use nature to to help us with problem solving when it comes to technology. Some of those same principles of biology and nature are just as applicable, and my wheels are turning. I'm going to try to redirect my attention, but let's see. Let's go ahead and get my screen shared with you all. And myself there. My name is Delandra Seals, and I am a teaching and learning librarian at the University of North Carolina at Wilmington. If you happened to see the news yesterday, we didn't have Jim Cantori here in Wilmington or Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina. We just happened to have had Lynette Charles, another meteorologist, with the Weather Channel. Due to our coastal location, we tend to have the Weather Channel here often, and I'm so thankful for nature and being able to provide us with the water we needed to remain out of drought. And also now we have a beautiful day that is not 90 degrees. And so I also want to take the time to thank Wisconsin Public Library Systems and, of course, for organizing these tech days. This is a fabulous opportunity to engage in meaningful dialogue with each other, to learn from one another. And I do hope that, this may spark some questions for you. As you may be an early adopter, may have jumped on board after the fact, or you could be a cautious adopter with technology. I don't like to say a late adopter because with anything, there's always time and a means to explore. You'll see throughout the presentation that I have a QR code in the top right-hand corner of the screen. And so that'll take you to the slides. And of course, on this page, I also have the bit.ly down there in the bottom, and I have no problem putting that down there for you all in the chat as well. So let's go ahead and get started here. And so I also want to share that due to my, I guess you'd say, the interests in technology and its applications with learning, it's continued my journey in my own learning. But I will tell you just a little bit about myself. I started off as a microbiologist. My undergraduate degree was completed at the University of Hawaii at Manoa in Honolulu, Hawaii. And so I spent some time working for Department of Defense in the land and realm of natural sciences. And then somehow recession happened, and I ended up making that transition into teaching high school sciences. There was a need during the recession also for special education teachers. So I have experience as a special education teacher, as well as for students who are gifted, as well as students with behavioral and emotional disabilities. But the libraries called me very strongly, and it really, goes very strongly with my own background in the natural sciences and research. And I ended up transitioning to the school libraries. And so I ran both an elementary and a high school library for quite some time before I navigated very briefly into the public library world, where I was a library branch manager in Sneads Ferry, North Carolina. Another place where we often have someone from the Weather Channel during our hurricane season. So you may have seen them or a topsail on the news at some point. After that little bit of time, I ended up transitioning into the higher education libraries. For anyone who's familiar with the K-12 school system, the current position that I have as a teaching and learning librarian is very similar to an instructional designer. I work with the liaison librarians in order to help develop online content for online platforms or LMS. Well, we don't use Blackboard, but it would be similar to Blackboard. We use Canvas. I also, with my special education background, I'm able to help and provide some guidance for inclusivity, inclusive instruction, as well as making sure that our library spaces are inclusive as well. So my whole background is it's very broad with lots of different avenues and paths, but really led me to this position here. And of course, with my love of technology, with maker spaces, teaching students how to 3D print, teaching, well, when I say students, but I'll say I've actually done that from ages 3 all the way up to seniorhood in the public library, or graphic design, even, helping with the digital divide. That has led me with my current journey as a doctoral student at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. And if you are unable to scan a QR code, I will once again go ahead and put that the URL in the chat for you. And if you have your personal devices, I will have some Slidos for you all. But I just want to kind of get an idea about you all. If I may ask you to use your React buttons, I want to kind of get an idea of who might be a school librarian here. I know there were some sessions for school librarians. If I may ask you to react, you can do a thumbs up or a clap or anything of the sort. If there are any here, we're happy to have you here. Yes. All right. Thank you. You are certainly appreciated, especially in this challenging time. All right. So now for my public librarians. All right. I know there's probably a lot of you here. Go ahead and hit that react button. Oh, yes. Yes. We love to see the love. I love to see that's right, the celebrations for librarianship. It's definitely a time for all of us to celebrate. If there's anyone here from an academic library or maybe even with the state library, um, yes, thank you. Absolutely. And then, of course, there's always our friends, right? The folks, maybe you've retired, maybe you've stepped away for a little bit, maybe you were with an association, a board of trustees, or another governing body we're happy to have you all here. And so librarianship is a journey that is very inclusive and welcoming to you all. And of course, with the tech days, that's exactly what this entails. All right, so if I may ask you now to take your personal devices, um, and either use the QR code or you can go to slido.com and type in that number. I want to get an idea from you about how often you've used AI in your professional work. Again, this session is for anyone at any stage of their exploration in AI. All right, and take a look here. If you've not used it, by all means, it is okay. We're going to kind of take some nice slow burn journey through this today. And that is okay. Yep, go ahead and use that Slido, or you can also use the QR code. Um, all right, so we have more than half of you all. And yep, once again, you can use, if you're in your web browser, you can open up another tab or another window to go to slido.com. You'd be able to enter in those numbers, or you can use that QR code. Very nice. All right, so we're going to get this to a stop here, and some of you, it looks like you have some friends of some tech savvy folks or partners and family members who might be in the land of computers. It's always good to have someone by your side who you can ask questions. We all need them. All right, let's take a look. All right, so more than half of you, just a few of you who have dabbled, and I do have 3% of you who've said, "What in the world is AI?" That is absolutely okay. I that is a valid question to have at this time, and you're in the right place if you happen to be one of those folks. And again, this is just for professional work. The next question is about your personal life. So this again is not to have anything to do with what you do as a librarian or anything related to librarianship. This is a different Slido. Okay, and your answers may be the same. They also could differ. I will admit, personally on my journey, I did happen to dabble personally first before I felt comfortable dabbling professionally. Again, that QR code is up in the top left corner for you, and then you can go to slido.com, enter in those numbers. And as you can already see, depending on how many folks respond, there are actually more of you, or about the same of you, who have not used AI both personally nor professionally. But at this point, we don't have anyone who said, what in the world is AI as far as personally? So that means that there are folks here who have seen its use out in the community or within their home and just in their daily lives. They've actually maybe seen AI, or maybe they own something where AI is bestowed upon them, whether willingly or not. All right. So for those of you who've used AI, I would just like to know, what have you used or explored This applies to both your work life or your personal life. What tools have you actually used or heard of? And give me an idea. Okay, go ahead. This is a word cloud. We're going to start seeing these here. Oh, I like that someone has used it for dinner ideas. So if you've used it for dinner ideas, write down what tool you have used to get ideas for dinner. There are quite a few platforms that can be used to help you get some. Oh, yeah. So I'm seeing Microsoft Copilot, Gemini, formerly known as Bard. I'm also seeing ChatGPT, the meal planning. I know you could typically use probably any of these. Canva has embedded AI, Magic School AI, absolutely. Some people have used them to develop chores, lists to help or to complete job applications, looking at articles for the news. Alexa was the first one I thought about when I saw that someone used it to get ideas for dinner. I'm in the kitchen and my Alexa automatically tells me, "Oh, would you like to hear a joke or would you like to see recipes?" Um, it's one of those things that I just can't escape. So if someone says, I don't know what AI is, well, AI may know you. And that's just the nature of technology at some point. So yeah, shopping sites, I see some folks have specifically used ChatGPT, making alt text. Oh, yes. Yeah, we're going to talk about some of these things, drafting emails, workshop planning. Absolutely. Thank you all for sharing. And I see Grammarly on there as well, Pixabay. There's quite a few things here using for using, whether it's the tool itself, whether it's how you've used it. Thank you so much for sharing some of the ways that you have used AI in your personal life or work life, or both. And for anyone who had no idea what AI is or had not dabbled, you can actually see that some of your colleagues across the state of Wisconsin, you've seen some of the means by which they have used AI in both of these manners. And maybe this may give you an idea of how you may be able to implement them either in your personal or your work life as you feel comfortable. Thank you all for sharing. We're going to keep on moving ahead. Oh, it's going to keep letting me move on. We have so many more. All right. So next, what we're going to do, one of the things I like to talk about is the fact that AI didn't come from completely thin air. AI didn't just jump out of a closet door and say, "Boo, I'm here." AI has been a kind of a, like I said, a slow burn, slow trickle for quite some time. And those in the profession of computer information science, they know this very well. And so I'm going to show you something. Actually, I have two videos back to back that are just going to kind of talk about this journey. So we'll go to the very first one. And so this first one is really going to talk more about that education avenue. And so as public librarians, you may have homeschool groups. You also have students coming in for teen book clubs. You have, story time for early literacy. You have high school students coming in there. So this is, one of the CEO or the creator of Khan Academy actually talking about this very early on means by which they wanted to create personalized learning and a personalized tutor. And I know a lot of places use like tutor.com and some of the other platforms. So this could, technically, I don't want to say it predates that, but it is now used and is now using AI to do what maybe people have done in the past. So let's take a look.
I think we're at the cusp of using AI for probably the biggest positive transformation that education has ever seen. And the way we're going to do that is by giving every student on the planet an artificially intelligent but amazing personal tutor. It can answer questions, it can quiz you, it can connect it to other ideas. And it's not just exercises, it understands what you're watching. It understands the context of your video. It can answer the age-old question, why do I need to learn this? And it asks Socratically, well, what do you care about? And let's say the student says, I want to be a professional athlete. And it says, well, learning about the size of cells, which is what this video is about, that could be really useful for understanding nutrition and how your body works, et cetera. That could take your average student and turn them into an exceptional student. It can take your below average student and turn them into an above average student.
And so with this video, they frame this in the realm of a student, but what if this was a patron, right? What if this was a parent coming into the public library, needing help with their child who, will be entering preschool? right? Maybe their child is not hitting developmental milestones, or maybe they just need a little bit more help or services outside of maybe attending a special education preschool, right? Maybe it is someone who is a senior citizen who is looking for assistance and need just a little bit of help. Maybe they don't have family nearby, they don't have someone who could provide them with support. But you also could have someone, as I saw in the chat, someone talked about helping folks with job applications, resumes, and cover letters. What he just said in this TED Talk applies to any patron who could enter your library. It could take someone who might not exactly have the formalized education or the formal skill set to be able to do these tasks, and AI may be able to fill that gap for folks. And so, as Catherine Stimp said, Catherine was able to help someone with that cover letter, and it's very possible you may be able to do the same. We have the digital divide. We've seen lots of conversations about that, where you have folks who you might assume have access to the infrastructure such as internet or a cell phone or a device by which you can use to maybe complete job applications or to continue your learning as an adult or teen. But that's not the case for everyone. And so, if they come into your branch, they come into your library, you may be able to provide them with some access to the tools that may be able to help them to fill their needs. And so, what exactly is artificial intelligence may now be that big question, right? Uh, Generally speaking, and I'm not going to use as much computer jargon. I am not going to, inundate you with techie terms. This presentation, the whole purpose of this is really to talk to you as librarians, as an educator, for those of you who have maybe no or limited background to this. And so basically AI is just a means by which computers are programmed to act and think like people. And I say think, but again, it's not the same thinking as you and I do, right? The computer is able to help it make decisions on its own. It's programmed to do that. There's data that is put in the coding and the programming. And so when you ask it a question or you put in text a prompt, then it is going to have an output based on what it was programmed to do in advance. It won't do more or beyond what it's programmed to do. And so these are those algorithms. These are now going to be the techie terms, so I apologize. The algorithms, this is machine learning, deep learning that happens. It's using patterns to make predictions as well, right? Because it doesn't know what you're thinking. It does not have all the background knowledge and information that you have as a person through your life experiences. It doesn't see, hear, smell, taste, touch what you do. And so it's going to do its best to have an output that could guide you to an output that you might need. So you've seen AI, whether you realize it or not. If you were one of those folks who said you never heard of it or didn't use it, well, we have self-driving cars, right? We have vehicles that self-park. Amazon has delivery robots going around. Grubhub as well. I think Domino's has these vehicles or these drones. All of these use AI to look at the space around them, around the vehicle via cameras, sound, and all these sensors, and then are able to use that information to help it navigate along a path. Some of you mentioned Alexa and some other devices. We also have like digital assistants such as Siri. There was a program called Cortana. All of these, even Zoom has an AI companion that can help summarize the conversations that occurred during a Zoom meeting. They learn from your interactions. They learn from what it sees, what it hears. All of that is technically like programming the AI so that you can then have an output. Vehicle recognition, you may have heard on the news about things like plate readers. You may have heard about things like even shot spotters, right? The devices that are used to detect gunfire in communities. And so this is when I'm going to kind of spit out a little something here. In fact, the plate reader was just used to detect the person driving the vehicle during the most recent attempt at a former president's assassination attempt this past weekend. But you may also have plate readers used for amber alerts or silver alerts in order to identify a vehicle where folks have been kidnapped, trafficked, or have gone missing. And then you also have, like I said, those things like shot spotters that are available to help as they potentially deter crime. Although we will say that there is a bit of bias when it comes to some of these devices. So then I have to put the question out there, where are these located? What type of socioeconomical status of the communities are in those places where these devices are? And, is it fair? Because if they're not everywhere, then who is there a target? Is there a specific population of people that will always be recognized or read by the plates, and whether or not they are a person who committed a crime or not? And we're going to talk just a little bit about that bias as well. But many, many moons ago, right? So we had something that you may not have heard about or heard about it briefly, or maybe you've forgotten because it's been some time. This was supposed to revolutionize shopping. Okay, this was something called Amazon Go. We're going to take a look because this is a different avenue. This is the personal life, right? So we just had the education side. Now we're going to see a little bit about the convenience. Oh, sorry.
4 years ago, we started to wonder, what would shopping look like if you could walk into a store, grab what you want, and just go? What if we could weave the most advanced machine learning, computer vision, and AI into the very fabric of a store so you never have to wait in line? No lines, no checkouts, no registers. Welcome to Amazon Go. Use the Amazon Go app to enter. Then put away your phone and start shopping. It's really that simple. Take whatever you like. Anything you pick up is automatically added to your virtual cart. If you change your mind about that cupcake, just put it back. Our technology will update your virtual cart automatically. So, how does it work? We used computer vision, deep learning algorithms, and sensor fusion, much like you'd find in self-driving cars. We call it Just Walk Out technology. Once you've got everything you want, you can just go. When you leave, our Just Walk Out technology adds up your virtual cart and charges your Amazon account. Your receipt is sent straight to the app, and you can keep going. Amazon Go. No lines, no checkout. No, seriously.
All right. So this was a technology or a store that actually is no longer in existence. You can actually see some of the technologies in Whole Foods or any of the few Amazon markets that are still left. And so one of the things you'll notice, it's very similar to right, someone says, I never heard of Amazon. It came and went so quickly. But again, it uses AI. With similar to the RFID tags that we use in libraries, right? All of the items in the store had had little stickers and little Okay, I love yes, exactly. I was surprised too. Had RFID tags on them. So as soon as they, left the shelf and went into a special bag or was near your phone, people were able to start seeing their cart populate, right? So very similar if you happen to use RFID tags in your library or any of those kinds of means, or maybe like the self-checkout, if you have those tags, within your books during processing, you now can just sit your books on top. There's no more scanning, things like that. It's very similar technology. So technically speaking, libraries have actually advised some of the technologies that are being used, and Walmart, Sam's Club, Costco are actually implementing some of these technologies, not just with using an app to shop, but basically, Costco is going to have these almost like these gates as you exit the door, and same thing with Sam's Club. They'll be able to detect whether there's something that hasn't been checked out, something that hasn't been paid for. So you're going to be seeing kind of like different iterations of this technology. But it wasn't something, if you can see, this is from 2016. There's even earlier technologies that have used it, where drones. It's been around for a long time. If you think about the days when there were calculators, coming out. Well, actually, we may not, but some of you may. Calculators were new on the scene at some point. Search engines and browsers were new on the scene. Google Translate was new on the scene. You have Wikipedia, photo math, and now you've got ChatGPT. As Matt Miller, who is a very big educational technologist in the realm of all things K-12, all of those things disrupted traditional teaching, right? Every time something comes out, we always adapt, we always move forward, and we learn from it. Growing pains. Teachers in the schools were, oh, how can I use this? Oh, are my students cheating? And students were, how can I use this? I need this. I need to learn more about it. And then you had IT staff talking about, how do I block it? I have to learn what these apps do because these students learn more than I do at this time. And so again, it seems like it came on very quickly, but it actually didn't. And one of the things I will say, when it comes to calculators, you can use your React button to this. How many of you remember, when you were in your formative years of education, when you were told that you would never, ever, well, you had to learn how to do the math the hard way because you will never be walking around with a calculator. So you had to learn. So if you would use a React button, does anybody recall those times? Use a thumb up, a clap, yes. And then what do we have? Cell phones on us in our pockets, on our wrists, right? I mean, somewhere they came up with glasses, right? We are now walking around with calculators all of the time. And we can do the scientific calculators. I can do derivatives and integrals on this joker if I really wanted to. Our teachers were wrong. They said Wikipedia would replace libraries. Guess what? We're still standing. So applause for ourselves. We're still here. We've made it past the internet. We've made it past Wikipedia. In fact, we are now informing Wikipedia. Wikipedia no longer has people going in there to basically disrupt the knowledge and information of being accurate, but we actually have people going in there correcting. We have scholars going into Wikipedia and putting in accurate information. And so applause to our work as librarians. Definitely, celebrate yourself because we have really moved almost 15 years past the beginnings of Wikipedia. And so this goes a little bit on with with the polls that we took. Basically, Microsoft completed some research earlier this year in May, and the research basically shows that 75% of people in knowledge work are using AI, right? And in the last 6 months, that number doubled. And so some people are using it to save time, improve their focus, improve their creativity, and of course, improve their enjoyment. And so even if you are a cautious adopter, or unless you want to say late adopter, more and more folks around you are using this tool. Just as the K-12 students are, you also are going to have patrons who may come in to ask you questions about this. And as always, there's always a risk and benefit to any technology, right? You can differentiate, you can, have personalized assistance. As I told you about barriers in place for maybe the digital divide or folks with differing abilities. People can be more creative. You mentioned Canva. You mentioned some other tools that help people develop their skills. You can also be more efficient, helping you write an email. But there are risks, right? We always, as librarians, are going to worry about misinformation, academic integrity, our agency and accountability as librarians, right? We are always concerned about data privacy, perhaps, and especially in the library where folks may be using our technology. And we're also worried that folks may not continue to think critically, that they may become over-reliant on this. But with any technology, there's always some negatives. And one of those includes that bias, that algorithmic bias. And hopefully we have a little bit of chance to explore that a bit more. But as I talked about that digital divide, there's three components of that, like the access to it, whether people can equitably access things, and also the design. Some things are designed to help people overcome these barriers, and then how people can use things can be a means by which folks can overcome that barrier. But you also have to think that sometimes things are designed And you think about them not being inclusive, right? As in sometimes things are designed and even technologies where it actually limits the access, or the design itself does not lead to positive experiences for folks. But AI, if you if you dabble in AI, you can see how there's a potential for it to actually improve in each of these three areas. And so I'm not going to show all these videos, but one of the means, as a special education teacher, I think about AI for accessibility. Um, we had a lawmaker, a Virginia congresswoman, used AI in order to actually create an accessible speech to text for another person in attendance at the congressional hearing. We have a sign language app that where someone can speak into this app, and it can translate it into the sign language for someone to be able to see. We have means by which they can create, a camera can see on a cell phone, and it can create the descriptive text for people. But most recently at the Olympics, we saw where the Olympic flame was carried by a paraplegic athlete who was actually the AI used sensors and so forth that allowed him to be able to take the steps and navigate as he carried the flame during the opening ceremonies. So AI for accessibility, just like AI for the environment, is very important and pivotal. So we can farmers are using it to help them with agriculture. We have other environmental applications all over the place, especially with sustainability. But even most recently, as my undergrad was at University of Hawaii at Manoa, and we are just past that 1 year mark since the Lahaina fires. University of Hawaii has been working on research in order to help predict and forecast wildfires. They have installed and implemented sensors all around, dry areas where they're looking at the moisture, humidity, wind factors, and so forth, in order to be able to get the resources needed and emergency resources there to help stop even the smaller brush fires. And with the application here, there's a potential chance for that to go to other places. We have wildfires in Canada, we have wildfires in Pacific Northwest, and so you could potentially see this in your backyard. But at the end of the day, I love this quote from Victor Davis Hanson. Artificial intelligence will simply reflect and magnify the mindset and ideology of its creators and impress those values upon the rest of us. So when I say this, it's just like with any technology. Um, the people who create the technology are exactly what the technology will represent. And so people who were tech savvy and were early adopters, right? The technology learned from what they put into the technology of AI. And of course, that means it's going to output things very similar to that. But the more people use this technology, it can receive more data and input from people of lots of different backgrounds, and therefore the technology can be made to become better. So it's really important for people of all backgrounds, walks of life, ages, and so forth to either be a part of the users, or especially to be a part of the people who become the programmers and the developers. This is when we talk about algorithmic bias, right? So the data sets that started may not represent the population and the public who are going to be using it. And so it's really important to have that very equitable, that very diverse data set that goes into helping make this better and to be used and accessed by any and all people. Okay, so ChatGPT may be something you are the most familiar with, right? And you've seen GPT 1, 2, 3, we're in 4 now. But technically speaking, ChatGPT can read something in just a few seconds that it would take a person like 1.5 million years to read, right? ChatGPT is just one model, one platform. And you may be wondering, what does GPT stand for? G stands for generative, right? It means it generates the text. P for P-train, it's trained on data. People put in data sets. It's going to look for patterns, and it's going to want to communicate like people do. Okay, the T part is for transformer. It's going to take the data, right? It's going to take what you ask it from your prompt and is going to transform it into something useful. So if you don't know anything else today, you can now answer a Jeopardy question, or maybe even it's Family Feud. Steve Harvey's pretty funny sometimes when I'm watching that. Other times I just get a big laugh or a chuckle or oh Lord. You might be able to answer this question if they do like a top 5 AI tools. You now can answer, what does the GPT stand for? But with any tool, I like to think about the privacy. To K-12 land, public library land, and here in higher ed, FERPA is something that's very important, especially in the library with data privacy. So one thing I like to tell people is that they really should take a look. Remember the ages in which some of these platforms and tools start their usage. Some tools require you to have an account in order to set them up. But there's always privacy notices here. Like they'll tell you that they're collecting the data. They're telling you that they're going to get feedback from you. They're going to say they have safeguards in place. But here it does say they can generate incorrect or misleading information. They can also produce offensive or biased content, right? So you have to keep all of this in mind as you explore. And I do have their privacy policies up there for you all to take a look. But there are some different examples in how, ChatGPT could be used. Just some basic ones. Yeah, explain quantum computing in simple terms. It could give you creative ideas for a birthday. It can also help you write some code. But there's always it always can help you go through text that's already either been said or been written. It can help you follow up on things, make corrections. But remember that with any technology, there's a potential for incorrect information. There's always a potential for harmful information to come out, biased content. And it just takes some time for it to catch up with our present. With ChatGPT, you have to use your own personal email in order to sign up. But with prompting, it can create anything that has text. And it uses a OpenAI, which is a big research center. But I'll always tell you that, the answers are never 100% reliable, and they could potentially have some bias. And so if ChatGPT were a person were to talk, let me put on my computer robot voice, it'd be, I am designed to have a conversational style and understand and respond to natural language. I do not have personal experiences or feelings. My responses are based solely on information and knowledge that has been programmed into me. Monotone, no nothing. Like there's no expressions, no feelings. It is just reading it. It is very hard to do that. I like to laugh. I have a conversational style. I respond to natural language. And again, you have to keep this in mind that this is a technology. And a lot of the things that we've already talked about, but one thing I'll say, it won't make ethical decisions for you. And it also has a difficulty with mathematics. So is there anyone here who also struggle with mathematics? If you do, give me a thumbs up, because you actually have something very in common with ChatGPT and other AI models. I see some folks saying, yes, there it is. Yep. So you guys, you and ChatGPT and AI have something in common. And so there we might be wondering, how can I use ChatGPT? Now, you can replace ChatGPT with any with any of the platforms or the large language models. Okay, so it could be Gemini, it could be Magic School, it could be Claude, it could be any of these tools. But you can use it to write lesson plans, right? Maybe if you, this is for a homeschool group, I apologize. Vocabulary, writing prompts, help them with quizzes. You can write notes to students, help create level text. Maybe you might need a starting point. Maybe you are writing a grant for, maybe their supplies at the library. Maybe those students need letters of recommendations, respond to emails. But one of the things that I will say that here at the public libraries here is because the librarians and library assistants aren't teachers, that that was something that was a little bit trickier. It's figuring out is how to serve the increasing number of homeschool groups. But now let's move aside that and let's just go to regular librarianship. You can generate ideas for library programming, especially as you have patron interest in community needs. You can create marketing campaigns. You can attract new patrons. When it comes to reference and research, you can get suggestions for books, articles. Amazon's probably been doing it on your personal device for a long time, based on your reading history, right? So you can do the same thing. Someone walks up and they say, "Oh, I've read." Give you a list of 5 books and a list of 5 authors. You can go right into a platform and ask it to suggest something similar, right? You can help them refine their research queries, help them find relevant sources. You can also help them write citations. There are quite a few citation managers like Citation Machine. There's other ones that's true, but just something very quickly, you can generate APA, MLA, Chicago style. Some of you mentioned the personal ways by which you've used AI, scheduling, time management, right? You have reports on library usage. If you happen to be exploring a chatbot for your library, it's very possible that you could provide customer or patron support through an AI-powered chatbot. You can write notes to patrons, maybe even like a commissioners or aldermen, that's appropriate to the age, the language, and needs of the person. You can use it to create alt text, descriptive text. You can translate materials into multiple languages or help visually impaired patrons, and especially with the one, that I mentioned the app earlier. Sometimes you might just need to generate some feedback. You need to write a very quick summary. Maybe you have teen library pages who are looking for recommendations as they apply for college. You can use it to write letters of recommendations and use it to respond to emails. And especially if you happen to have one of those salty emails that come across your inbox, that challenges your ability to not have emotions. And you need a very neutral way to respond and stay employed. And so you can use AI or some form of AI tool to help you write an email that keeps you going there. And so we really do need to share more about how we're using AI, and there's going to be lots of policies that come out, lots of ways, lots of things, but just remembering the ways that AI can might still be emerging. I told you that it has a hard time with math, but it's only as good as what you ask it. And always, as librarians, we have to make sure we tell people that we need to be very careful, and it's okay to double check and triple check what we're doing in order to make sure that it's accurate. And so I have some sample prompts, and if you haven't had a chance to see what AI can do, I actually wanted to show you what it can do. So I have ChatGPT up here, but I'm actually more of a Gemini fan, the Googles and everything. So I'm just going to put in a couple of prompts for you all to see. I have taken that very first one. So when you open up Gemini, you'll have it asks, yeah, it has my name. Hello, how can I help you today? Gives you some ideas. Here, create a studying plan for language learning, a road trip here, brainstorm ideas for beverages with its specific ingredients. But here I have a prompt here, and I'm a teen librarian. I'm telling him who I am. I wanted to write 10 open-ended questions about the text Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds for a book club. Okay. So it has divided up the responses into 3 different areas: questions for character development and themes, exploring the narrative and author style, as well as personal reflection and discussion. One of the first questions with character analysis: how do you feel about the character of Will? What qualities does he possess that you admire or dislike? Narrative structure, discuss the unique structure of the novel with each chapter representing a floor of the building. How does this contribute to the overall story? I have to admit that I probably would not be able to come up with these questions like this, especially the one about the narrative structure comparison, off the top of my head. So I think that it is rather curious and interesting, brilliant, that the level of these questions is actually, it's actually very high, and can be a very good resource, especially if you are crunched on time. So here's another one. Let's actually, I'll have to go to that one right there. Sorry about that. I can't copy and paste. We are an adult services librarian, and we are going to develop a plan for wellness and mindfulness programming. We wanted to create some programming that includes activities, resources, sensory kits, yoga, meditation. And this will be for adult services. And so it has looks like 3 days of potential programmings, Mindful Mondays, Yoga Tuesdays, Sensory Sundays, has a goal, some activities, some programming tips that can be used as a means for you to save some time. And whenever you're not, if there's something you really don't like about it, it does give you the opportunity to look at 3 different drafts and options. This one gives you a few more sentences as far as an introduction, and they are very similar. You see, this one does not go by days of the weeks. This one gives you a little bit more, and this one actually includes some information for you to consider for accessibility, for diversity, community partnerships, and a means by which you can promote this with your community and within for the patrons of your library. This one also includes cooking classes, music therapy. And so this one differs from the very first draft. You have this one includes Wednesday wellness. This one includes Friday fun. This one mentions having guest speakers. There's specific titles here. This one includes some apps as well, and some things to include in your sensory kits. As you can see, that took all of 2 seconds to populate and load. But these are all ways that you can use AI when you might be crunched on time. I'll do the last one here for our other children's programmers. Oh, actually, yeah, I'll do 2 more just to give you an idea of how quick. I just have Gemini open just to show you just how fast this occurs. This one is a children's story time lesson plan using one of the Pete the Cat books here, and it gives you an opportunity to create station rotations with crafts. It gives you the activities. It tells you what stations to set up. Even includes a closing song. I mean, you could do I love my white shoes, I love my red shoes. That's a great song always. And some additional tips. For my Pete the Cat friends, that is something that you could certainly enjoy. All right, let's take a look at one last one with Gemini. And this would be, let's say some of you are on the job hunt. And you might be looking to maybe move up in your career, maybe to a branch manager position or something higher. You can actually have it ask you questions as if you're the interviewer and you're the candidate, and you can have it ask you the questions one at a time. So you would be putting in your answers, and then it would use your answers to then do follow-up questions. So you'll see this in there in the slides. I highly recommend you give that one a try because that one requires your user input, your response to do the next question. So if you all, after the conclusion of this, I definitely, suggest you guys get in there and give that a whirl. But let's keep going. So we just took a look at Gemini, take a look at their privacy policy, and they are a large language model. I think they're getting ready to come up to like the middle of 2023. They are always going to be very behind. Nothing is in real time. And so that's something to think about. And of course, with Gemini, it uses Google, whereas ChatGPT requires people to go in and code and program. Google is everywhere and is constantly getting input from users. Gemini, this is just a comparison between the two. Remember, it's very difficult with numbers. If I'm going 8 miles an hour, how many hours will it take me to go 8 miles? This is when AI gets it wrong and it says 12 and a half, right? If you're going 8 miles an hour and you've gone 8 miles, you've only gone 1 hour in length and duration. So there are mistakes, and ChatGPT makes a bigger one where it has a hard time comparing the magnitude between numbers and identifying which number is actually greater than the other number. But you may have some folks look for general information about the area in which your library is located. They may be looking for some general historical information, and you can certainly use these tools for that. Bing, I'm not sure how long this one might be in existence because Copilot is really out there now. But they did have a chat feature that was pretty good. This one had a mobile app. Getting in there, diving in and exploring some of these tools, can help you with programming plans, ideas, emails, writing prompts. All of these are great tools. Copilot is with Microsoft. But there's other tools. UChat is another one. It's more like a chat bot. And so it can answer questions and things kind of in a very general term, but depending on how you ask your question at any platform, you can always have a means for a good description. Another tool is Consensus. This one here, you ask it a question and then it can help you because you synthesize some information from those research papers. But this might be better for middle schoolers and high schoolers, or maybe even just general members of the community. They're not working on research, but maybe they just need some good summaries. And so this one helps you find the relationships between concepts. You can get yes or no questions and the effects. So this one here, like I said, really more for older patrons and definitely not for younger patrons. And sometimes you just are looking for another place to get another tool. Maybe you might not have Adobe Creative Cloud, right? And maybe you're looking for a one-stop shop to work with your PDFs, your images, videos, or writing. This is one of the tools, TinyWow, and you can take a look and explore this one. This one is free. But always you need to take a look at the data privacy and make sure that it's a good fit for you. One of the tools that's become really popular here in North Carolina, just like Magic School AI, CuriPod is pretty popular. So what you do is you put in the state curricular standard in the grade level, and then it generates a whole lesson. And it creates an interactive lesson that can be displayed on students' personal devices or laptops or school devices. It even sets up presentations where they can join using a pin number at the very top and follow along step by step. So it's very good for remote instruction. But this might be something, if you have stations or areas for tutoring with K-12 students, this might be something to consider. If they come in with their assignments, it's very likely that they have, I hate to use the word syllabus, they probably have, somewhere for their weekly planner, their weekly schedule, they probably have the standard that they're working on, and this could be a way that you can help them. Just like with Magic School AI, it's very similar. And Magic School AI, both of those are, they do have a free version, and there are some other features that come along with the paid version. But it can help you again with students in that K-12 realm. We have some tools that might help folks who might be neurodivergent. There are this one's called Goblin Tools. It helps people take these simple single tools or tasks and that may be overwhelming or difficult, and helps to break them down for better understanding or even for better task completion. So it can help you start things, help you plan tasks. There's these different modes to help you. So for instance, maybe you might be overwhelmed and upset in an angry way with emotion, and you need to write it politically correct or an email that won't get you in trouble. And so you may want to use Professor to write that email so that it can, or Formalizer, so that it can help take away some of the emotion and really help make it an email that won't get someone in trouble. But this might be something you might use with some of your patrons. It's specifically designed for people who have ADHD or autism or other neurodivergent conditions. And again, it helps organizing and prioritizing their workload. And now if someone has a very, very large project to work on, this may not be suitable for them, but for smaller things, this is something to consider, and you may want to use it yourself. We looked at we talked about Magic AI. And you can take just words. For instance, I have the one up there, a panda surfing a wave. No, pandas don't surf. But let's say I wanted to make that picture. I type it in there and it generates that image in just a few seconds. Images can be created with Canva, Adobe Firefly. You can do so in Gemini. Ideogram, Copilot are all things that you can use. I have the links there for you to explore. There's some other GPT-based sites. Someone mentioned recipes. Well, there's another one, Chef GPT. If you haven't heard about that one, Chef GPT can help you put in the ingredients you might have in your kitchen, and it'll give you instructions and a recipe that you can use. You can also come up with a travel itinerary. Let's say you have a budget and you tell it what you want to explore and utilize. Well, you can take Roam Around, and it'll help you put in a full itinerary that is like fuel efficient and energy, like your own energy efficient. And you can use Roam Around to help plan a vacation or something, or even maybe, I'd hate to say field trip, but maybe you might have some type of a field trip or a travel opportunity at your library. But as I mentioned before, with all the good that comes with technology, there's a potential for some bad, okay? And that one of the biggest bads is bias, okay? So AI systems are a reflection of what is out there, right? Some of those negatives, what's in the news, what's in books, what's in TV. It's a potential to have some racial, gender, political, socioeconomical biases in there. So it cannot be reduced or it cannot be eliminated, but there are ways that you can help reduce it. And one of the best steps and strategies we can do is to evaluate all the responses ourselves, right? And so, and if you see something and it is not a good response, talking about that, sharing that with someone. As a librarian, we do have that duty, that responsibility to tell people why it isn't a good answer or why it isn't a good result. And so that we can learn. And of course, it should help you write better prompts in order to help eliminate, or sorry, not eliminate, but reduce that bias, right? So be better in your prompting, be very specific, ask for diverse perspectives. Remember, and when the prompts I put in, I said, I was a teen librarian, I was a children's librarian. I could even say I am a children's librarian working with students with disabilities who are the ages of birth through 2. I could say I am, for the one with the teen librarian for the book club, I could say I'm a teen librarian working with students where English is their second language. Um, Maybe if I'm, asking it questions, I could even say the population that I'm working with. I could be working with senior citizens. I could be working with folks who have very limited technical knowledge and skills. And so putting that in there helps with diverse perspectives. And so it can give you some different responses that may help reduce that bias. But again, using AI is okay, but always have your students and your patrons use their own critical thinking skills too. But it takes time. You have to teach it, practice it, model it, repeat it. And this also goes with our patrons. And so there's, again, going to be mistakes in there that can happen. There are things that that we just cannot predict are going to happen. It happens with any computer. These are those inaccuracies and what we also call hallucinations. We just want to make sure that they do not have any harmful outcomes. So again, keeping that librarian hat on, like a poncho, just so to speak, and just making sure that you're there to help evaluate and work with people as they explore this. And I did see where some folks have used Goblin Tools. Yes, Goblin Tools it could be a really great tool. And if you have used any of these tools, maybe in the chat you can share some ways you can use it. But one of the things, as I said here, graphing calculators, Wikipedia, the internet all came out. People were so worried it was going to take over the world, like Pinky in the Brain. No, it hasn't, right? But, some people could begin to use it more and more and more. We never want anyone to lose their own critical thinking, their own skills. So, making sure that you are, using it with integrity and also teaching your patrons to use it with integrity. It will most likely be ubiquitous, right? We will see it more and more in our daily lives. And so going ahead and even if you're a cautious adopter, going ahead and exploring these so that you are prepared is a very good strategy. There are checkers out there if your people are worried about cheating, but they're not as reliable or accurate. There's still research in process to help those be even better. But there are some extensions and some tools out there. But one of the best things we can, do as a librarian is telling people to cite AI as a source. MLA and APA have provided some guidance that folks can use to cite artificial intelligence. And this is one of the best things we can do. And as you can even see here, there's an in-text citation over here. And you can use one of those tools. The hyperlinks are here for you all to be able to cite generative AI. But I'm actually going to take just a couple of minutes to share with you about writing prompts, because if you are not sure about writing prompts, this is probably the most important thing about using AI. How you write your questions, what you put in, it has a direct correlation with what comes out. So you need to make sure that you add the context in there for the prompt. You say who you are as the person writing into the box and provide details about who's going to read it. tell it what you want it to come out. Tell you want it in 2 paragraphs, 3 paragraphs. If you want a certain style of writing, if you have a tone, right? Or a tone to be removed, you can have it do that. The last part is the task. Tell it exactly what you want it to do. And so this is a part of some of the work we're doing in North Carolina in order to help provide guidance. So the context, the role, the audience, the format, and the text. So for instance, this is one for a teacher in K-12 land. If I want to see, let's see, let me go here. So I'm an expert 4th grade math teacher. Okay, so this would be here, right? This top part, I'm telling it to create 10-word problems that'll help students with a specific standard. I want it to be fun and engaging. I want it to include names and references to Minecraft, right? And then I have the standard down here for it to do this. And you can see the correlation, right? I can see, you can see the alignment here with the craft. You can see the audience is the green. You can see the relevance. You can actually, yeah, it's okay to write a paragraph, right? Because the better you put something in, the better something's going to come out. It's okay to have more. More is actually okay here. And it is best to work with someone, have a partner in your AI journey who can help you, just like, as librarians, we have our experts. If you need to work or you have programming that partners with teachers, don't forget to include them as subject matter experts, but we as librarians are also subject matter experts when it comes to research and quality. And so, continuing to evaluate it for accuracy, bias, completion, and then we can go back and take a look at our prompt and we can make it even better, right? It's okay to take things instead of saying, oh, write a 5-paragraph whatever on, I don't know, Wisconsin flora and fauna. Okay. Instead, maybe I might just ask it to maybe write an introduction, right? Or maybe start with some research questions, 1 paragraph at a time. Instead of a whole lesson plan, 1 component. The same thing goes with your program and planning. Maybe you can just generate some ideas first for some different planning. And then maybe after that, you can go and have it create some stations and set up after that. So again, chunking, that means, dividing things into smaller pieces is actually okay. And you can be very detailed with what you put in so that you have better results. If you're clear, you're concise, and you are sure that what you've written will be understood. You also provide as much context as possible. What your result and your output would be that much better. But again, with AI, we remember the days we had to remember the multiplication tables, and we had to regurgitate them on potentially weekly tests, right? And time has moved on, and the regurgitation of facts is not as important anymore as the actual how to do things, right? And deeper dives and deeper learning, deeper synthesis of knowledge and content. Those are so much more important today than regurgitation of things. And so ChatGPT, it's surface level, right? It's surface level, and it can take you to maybe the second and third steps of that. But again, with our own personal evaluation and critical thinking, it helps us evaluate that to make that output even better. ChatGPT or any other AI can never replace creativity, critical thinking, problem solving, will never be empathetic, and it can never replace human interaction. Okay, you have a personal voice. It can't debate, it can't discuss. If you're a creator, it's going to have difficulty collaborating. It won't have that empathy that would be in place with something like a Socratic seminar. Okay, it's a useful tool, it's a helpful tool, but we have to put our eyes on it, and we have to put our librarian expert, subject matter expert brains with it as well. So that we can have AI help us enhance learning, help us be more productive, help us generate organized content. And it also should be helping us rethink cheating, plagiarism. But as I talked about the digital divide, I talked about the inequities of learning. excuse me, with very diverse different backgrounds and of people, places, and experiences. It can also help us address those gaps that we may not be able to do. But always remember, the prompting is the most important piece, no matter what happens. And the context, the role, the audience, the format, and the task. If you can just keep this in mind and help you guide in writing your prompt, you will be a better prompter, and practicing it will only make you better. But there's so many tools out there. Question Well. We have Conmigo, I mentioned earlier, EduAid, Google Labs, DEFID. These are all, there's so many more tools out here, and there's so many, especially when it comes to research. Like Research Rabbit is a really good one. There's so many. I could have pages of the tools. And in fact, just that, I will tell you, for my K-12 folks, I will share it this way, if I can get it here. I did create a whole it is a very big set of resources for folks, where I have just kind of gone through and made a guide of some different, whether it's states, state standards, state research, state tools and guides. I have free tools here by the purpose. I have paid tools here, and I have some of the main tools and some main descriptions here. So I'm just kind of curating these tools. So there's so many more, and you can utilize them. Yes, I said it's K-12, but it's applicable to anyone, because they are all very relevant to the work that we do as librarians. We are also educators, but librarians are beyond K-12. Librarians can see so much more. So you will be able to you'll be able to see this, within there. And if those of you who had that bit.ly, you were able to see that as well. But there's so many resources there, and I'm constantly adding. And if you would love to add some tools to that, I would love to put them in there as a nice repository to everyone. But I just wanted to take that time to kind of break AI down for you in a very non-computer, non-techie means, because it can seem overwhelming to folks who do not have a science background. I'm hoping that you might be motivated and encouraged to give something a try, whether it's in your personal life for a recipe, or for travel, or maybe it might help you with programming, writing a grant, or some other ideas that are applicable to you in your space and professionalism as a public librarian. If you ever have any questions, it's so weird saying this, I am on the X. That's all I always want to say, Twitter. I am on the X. That is my handle. But you can always email me, sealsd@uncw.edu. I'll have this presentation on here. And don't forget, you're welcome to hashtag any of these things. Let's say you happen to use one of these tools and you have a wonderful, wonderful result. I'd love to see it in action. Put it on Twitter and add that hashtag on there. Tag me in there. I'd love to celebrate your exploration. It is a journey for us all, because AI is it will be everywhere. You'll see a Domino's truck delivering pizza. You'll see a Grubhub trolley cart delivering something, Amazon with drones, red light cameras. I don't want to scare anyone or help them or make them seem maybe anxious about it, but there are means to help us with fighting wildfires, with helping folks with differing abilities and limb differences navigate this world, for people with visual disabilities and visual impairments to be able to see the world without their eyes. There is a means that all of this can be beneficial to someone, that some of this can be beneficial to someone, and maybe you might be able to use some of these tools to help folks in your library. And so right now we are at a time where we can ask some questions. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to take us out here. I'm not going to share my screen for the moment. And yes, oh, thank you, Brian. I certainly appreciate you putting that in there, but I'm also going to put the URL for the presentation in here as well, because I definitely know that folks will be able to access all of those, including the videos that we did not see. Folks will be able to take a look at those videos on their own, just for the sake of time. So let's see if there's any questions. By all means, we can get the party started. Let's see. And I'm afraid, Angela, we are unable to hear you.
How about now? I have two questions for you that kind of tie us back, those of you that joined us earlier today. Um, First of all, you spoke about citations and gave us examples and tools for citing our use of AI. What if we're using AI to inform less formal or academic work, like in writing policies, or if we are using it to create emails or write proposals for grants, things like that, where we're using AI to generate ideas or maybe to summarize text? Is it necessary for us to use citations in things like that? And if it is, how would you go about referencing your use of AI if you're not, actually like copying that text, but using the idea?
That is a wonderful question. And as a librarian, I have to say we should always cite our sources. We should always do so. But one of the biggest things I will say before it's time to cite, how about talking with the folks, maybe who's on the grant committee or maybe in the work that they're doing, and find out what's allowed. There are research journals, periodicals that have statements and clauses stating that, number one, it's okay to use AI. You just need to be upfront with us and tell us how you used AI and provide that with your submission to a journal or a research publication. There's the other side where they might say, tell us, sorry, not to tell us, we don't want you to use AI. And it is not allowed. So when you work as a librarian, I think you definitely need to find out from the beginning how it's to be used. Now, um, there's also tools on there. I didn't mention things like a Grammarly, right? Grammarly is another tool. It is technically a form of AI. But a lot of people, the commercials are everywhere. Like, talk about ubiquitous. I see the commercials every time. Hulu, for goodness sake, every day I'm watching it over and over and over. And it tells you, oh, do this, and oh, you're underwater with your paper. But you can use Grammarly to help you with your productivity. Grammarly technically, like I said, is AI, and I think if you're helping a student, if you're helping someone who is working on something that will be a submission or will be turned in, whether it's for a grade or a grant, you must find out from the beginning. And to cite, you can in MLA, APA, Chicago. The best thing you can do is, depending on your style, you might have a footnote, or you might have an in-text citation instead. And of course, having that in your list of references or sources. I'm trying to remove between that. I don't remember Chicago style, so I can't say that. How it's at the end of the document. But once again, know from the beginning. And if you are putting something in, putting in a prompt, and you're using it to trigger your own thoughts and ideas, you're not going to copy it word for word. It's an idea generator, right? There, you may not need to cite it as a source if it is helping you with background knowledge information you already know, right? And helping you conceptualize that. Because sometimes that is, you already know it. Maybe you're just in a crunch, you just need a spark. But if it is a grant, you might want to be careful. I told you that the checkers are not the best. But what if it actually has given you, what if you use this and it was almost identical to what someone else has submitted? College campuses, and K-12 campuses use Turnitin and some other tools. What if it's triggered in that grant that it is identical to something else that's been submitted? Having that conversation up front and what is allowed. And I'm not saying you say, oh, I'm using AI, but can I use some online tools to help me generate my thoughts and help me get some summaries together? What is allowed, and just having a good relationship to be able to converse in that manner. That's a
Perfect.
very good
Awesome.
question.
Thank you. And then another question that had come up related to teaching AI information literacy to our patrons in the public library. I think especially adults that may be hesitant or are not having the exposure that our students might have in the classroom. Do you have any tips or recommended tools for ways that we in the public library space can teach responsible use of AI, or even just encourage our patrons to not be afraid to give it a try?
Yes. So yeah, that's two things.
Mhm.
Tools to help them get started, and then also teach to help them with literacy. So, in academia, whether it's K-12 or higher ed, we talk about media literacy, information literacy. I can see a potential for a programming where, you see, I heed this with, I have to say, you have to heed this with a bit of caution, because you also don't want to be fear mongering in the
Mhm.
same way, right? You don't want to have a programming, is this fact or fiction, or identify the fake? And, especially this is an election season, there's a lot going on out there, but maybe you might have a program where you help folks kind of take a deep dive in news media, and news media literacy, right? And even especially when it comes to media bias, right? And in having them evaluate, media sources. So for instance, these image generators, okay, we've seen them in the news where the pictures and images are being created. They are being created for bad purposes and reasons. And also, they could be taking something that is the intellectual property of someone and convert it into something different, against the will and permission of the person whose property to which it belongs. And so, those are really important things. And I have to say, it would depend on the age and the technology skill set of the patron. But one of the first things you could do, for instance, I mean, what is National Cookbook Month? Is that April or something like that? You could go in and maybe incorporate AI into some programming you're already doing, as in having almost like passive programming, right? You could, maybe with your cookbooks, maybe you might have an iPad, a laptop, or something set up where, come in and tell me 5 things from your fridge and let's see this recipe pop out, to help some folks who might be reluctant users, help them see the power that it could have. Or something like roam around, tell it what you want to do when you travel, and let's see if it can come up with a travel plan for you. Also, um, people have very smart technology in their home and they may not know how to use it, right? People have Alexas, people have doorbell cameras, people have refrigerators with cameras that give them a shopping list. So reminding patrons that they may have some of these things already in their home, and maybe helping them use that. I know you can get your iPad or your laptop and your phone set up with Overdrive, or excuse me, Libby. That is true. No one can bring the refrigerator to your programming and learn how to use the refrigerator, um, to help them generate a shopping list. Um, but I think if you were to incorporate some of these tools, Goblin tools might be a good suggestion. People hear of Photoshop. Well, Adobe is not much different from that, right? Maybe they are just needing to use Google Gemini, or ChatGPT may be a little bit much of a stretch. That one, um, let me say that because people Google, the fact that Google is a verb and a noun, right, and a number technically, um, which is also a noun. To Google, that is synonymous with searching in a browser. And because of the new integrations with Gemini, people may not realize they've already been using Gemini. It says AI powered search at the very top, and
Mhm.
then it populates responses. So helping people understand what's happening. Maybe you just come in and have people searching your browsers. It could be programming, and people can understand what's really there. And meeting people where they are in their skill set is the most important thing. Don't come in and try to throw all these tools, the tech and the terminology. It's not gonna, it might work for 25%, but it won't work for everyone. So maybe you might want to put up some polling around and finding out from your patrons and what they have, what do they want to do, and the why, to help guide you, with these opportunities for programming. I think I see a chat in there.
Um, Perfect. Thank you so much. I love that idea. And I'm right with you with like the cookbook club recipe thing. I think that could very easily integrate into what we already have, make it very accessible for folks. Thank you for that answer. Then there was just one other comment, like many browsers of old, the tools will drop off over time with dominant players coming to the forefront and changing. Do you have
Right.
any recommendations for where we might go to make sure that we're kind of attuned to the next AI thing?
Oh, of course. Because I'll be honest, and I've been exploring it now for about 4 years. There are tools that I started using that are no longer in existence, right? Or the name has changed and they are not available anymore to the public. For instance, Google used to be called the Bard, thinking Shakespearean. And it's not that it's gone, it transformed into what's called Gemini. So the names change, just like Bing search. I told you, I think that's going away because I do believe Copilot will be Microsoft's full and only product.
Mhm.
Um, I will admit that with technology, it's most likely the best idea to follow the largest quantity of money, research, and time. Some of the smaller ones, especially if they are open source, and that's what ChatGPT has the model has a lot of open source opportunities for creators and developers to go in and create something. And they tend to have some smaller subsets of users. I'm not saying go with the crowd, but recognize that it is just as that question stated, is that there could be a tool you love and enjoy that's just no longer supported anymore. Um, and I'll be honest, just like when you learn Boolean search, right? Or learn more about the wayfinding of the library, you learn more about Cooltown and reasoning and inquiry, right? And all that. We became better as researchers, right? So the same thing goes with prompting and exploring AI, right? So use all your tools and skills as a librarian, right? And the same things that you're teaching your patrons, apply them to the AI so that you can be better prompters, and be better users of the AI. If you are, really good at that Boolean, think about how that responds or correlates to crafting that perfect prompt. And if you're creating images and you have a graphic design club, if you're 3D printing, if you have maker spaces and you're 3D printing, find those means to apply your own skill set and maybe now dabble into some of the AI opportunities within some of the things that you're already doing. But yeah, Adobe's not going away. Google isn't going away. Chances are ChatGPT is not going away. Copilot, Microsoft, I think, is full force on that. Um, but yes, with calculators are now everywhere, right? We still have Wikipedia. There's going to be some underlying things, and I think those main ones will be there. But it is okay to try something new. And maybe if there's something that does go away, take a look at what it was that you liked or needed or were able to get from that tool. And of course, you may be able to take that with you. You may be able to port that with you to another platform, another AI tool.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us today. I don't see any other questions, so I will thank you for sharing all of that knowledge, giving us so many resources today, and to look forward to exploring more in the future. To all of you